praise the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Today we're going to learn the song Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. We can play this in a few ways, but to start you're going to need these chords: the G chord, the C chord, the D chord, the E minor chord, and this B7 chord. There's a version of this song that's made famous by the artist Jeff Buckley, and he fingerpicks this song on an electric guitar, but you can also do the same on an acoustic. So if you want to do what I did in the intro, what we're going to do is start with this G chord here, and we're going to try to think in patterns of 6 with our fingerstyle. And if you don't know, we're going to use the thumb and the first 3 fingers on our right hand to do fingerstyle, with our thumb following the bass, that means the lowest note of the chord, and our first 3 fingers following the melody, which for now is going to be on the high E, B, and G strings, the bottom 3 strings of the guitar. When I say think in 6s, that's because the song is set in 6/8. So you're going to be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with your fingerstyle pattern. And we're going to play thumb, first, middle, ring, middle. And when we get to our 6th note, what we're going to do is swap down to the 2nd fret on the top E string. We're going to go ahead and play that with our thumb for our 6th note. So all together on this G chord, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This leads us down to the E minor chord, but we're going to do something funny. We're going to try to keep our bottom 2 fingers held in the same spot that they were for G, on the 3rd fret of each of the E and B strings. So you're going to create an E minor chord with your first 2 fingers, and you're going to leave this G chord down just for the intro of this song. Go ahead and play the exact same thing with fingerstyle in the exact same way. Thumb on the low E, then the first 3 fingers on the bottom 3 strings, playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again on 6, jumping up that bass to the 2nd fret of that low E string. So the E chord looks like this. This creates a nice little loop between G and E minor, and you do that a couple of times to begin the song. We're going to continue our pattern of 6s, and the next chord here is C. Now there could be some debate as to what strings you pluck, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter as long as it's in groups of 6s, but what I like to do here for this C chord is start with my thumb on the A string where that lowest bass note is, and then I like to start my first 3 fingers on the D, G, and B string, play 1, 2, 3, and then I like to swap my ring finger down to this high E so I can go 4, 5, 6 on the high E, B, and G strings. We actually do one more pair of 3 for this C chord, which we can play playing the notes that we have held down, and then swap quickly to the D chord for another set of 3 beats. 1, 2, and then 3. I like to do a double pluck on the high E and B strings. So the C chord looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on D. This leads us to the G chord, which we do our same progression on. This leads us back to the G chord where we do our same progression. Then down to the D chord for one more group of 6. So the beginning of the song looks something like this: the G chord first, down to E minor, up to G, down to E minor, and then the singing starts while you're doing this loop. Then we do the C chord with an extra 3, then D, then G, down to D as a transition. The second half looks a little something like this. We're going to use a very similar picking pattern for each of these chords, but we're going to go now from the G chord with a quick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we're going to ramp it up with 1, 2, 3 on the C chord and 1, 2, 3 on the D chord. And the entire time what I'm doing is thumb first, and then I'm playing the bottom 2 strings together on both C and D. Now down to E minor with our thumb on the low E string and the bottom 3 strings. Then the C chord, and the D chord again, this B7, which I like to play just on the bottom 4 strings, so I don't even bother with this A string fret. I'm only playing the bottom 4 strings of the guitar. From D, G, B, and E here, and again in groups of 6. And it finally ends on this E minor for this second section. So to show you one more time, we started on G, the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall, the major lift, the D, then our B7, and we end on E minor, which is a very beautiful part of the song. You can see that we did that E minor twice with our patterns of 6. Now we move on to C, which we do twice with our groups of 6. Then E minor again. Back to C. Then G. D. Then we're on to our loop for the song. So let's do a complete playthrough. I'll put the chords up here on the screen so that you can play along, and you can even strum instead of doing fingerstyle if that's your jam. Let's see how it sounds. I taught it to you here in the standard key, and you can actually use this note here on the open D string to hear the starting pitch for your vocals. First there was a secret chord. Jeff Buckley plays the song a lot higher up on the guitar, so you can use a capo and transpose this anywhere you'd like for your own voice. And the final thing I want to mention before we go is a lot of people have questions about the passage that goes the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall, and the major lift. And there's actually a really cool music theory idea going on here, so if you ever want to impress your friends, I'll tell you what that's all about. Leonard Cohen here is actually describing the musical progression as it's happening pertaining to the key of G. When I say the word key, what I'm talking about is the central focus of the song, and you could argue that the G chord is the central focus of this song. It's the tonal center of all the harmony. Everything seems to draw back to the G, and when you think of it like that, then you can also get all of the chords that belong in the same key as G. The key of G contains all of the chords from the G scale, which follows alphabetically from G, and you can look at them in numbers, with G being the first chord of the scale, and the next letter, which in this case is A, being the second chord of the scale, and so on. So when Leonard Cohen says the 4th and the 5th, he's actually referring to the positions of those chords within the G scale. Now, if we play in the key of G and you count up 4 letters, G, A, B, and C in music, that's the C chord as the 4th, and then of course D as the 5th. He mentions E minor being a minor fall, and that's because in the key of G, we have a concept called relative minor, which is truly like a dark tonal center of the same key. This can be looked at as the minor pair to G. So the song falls into a minor sound when you hit this E minor chord. And then he mentions the major lift, which is also attributed to the C chord. The chord in the 4th position of any scale has a lifting effect to the key, and this is a tip that you can take with you as you're playing your own chord progressions. It's good to start assigning roles to the chords within a key because it works for every key, and when you're making your own songs or analyzing other people's songs, it can be really cool to see how these pieces fit together. The C chord creating that lifting effect when you're in the key of G. The final note I want to mention is that this B7 chord is not naturally found in the key of G, but it is often used as a setup to the E minor chord. The B7 brings all of this tension in at the largest part of the song, and this might be why most people find this part of the song the most beautiful, because it sets this really tensious, heart-wrenching sound up to be resolved, but not to the place that you'd like it to, this G chord, but instead to that dark minor center. So hopefully you learned a few things about this song today, and you can tell your friends all about that. At the same time, you also have this nice tutorial for the song. So go home and play this and let me know what you think in the comment sections below. Let me know if there's other songs that you'd like to see here on this channel, and make sure to check out my original music, my Patreon, and more with the links in my profile or at official Will Ash anywhere on the internet. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.